which are unexplored.
Yeah.
And also my son studied there, he did his MBA.
Oh, okay.
In Stanfield. So,
okay.
He was very enthusiastic about taking us to different places for trekking, for boating, and island hopping and all that.
But yeah, they keep building new things here. So every time you come, there is something.
Singapore is that way is still a very interesting place to visit, irrespective of how many times you visited.
Yes. Although for us, we are quite bored because usually I travel every week, but I've been stuck here for the last 6 months.
Okay. No, I think that's the case, because all of us, a lot of us got used to traveling, and that became part of your life, and suddenly that is one avenue which is stopped.
Correct.
Hello, Purnima. Hello, Monica.
Good morning, sir.
Morning to you, Purnima. Purnima and Monica are part of C3S.
Oh, okay.
And that's Mr. Shivaji there.
Hi there.
Who's trying to look at the Other Shangri-La. We will talk about it a little later.
Hello, sir.
Hi there.
Interesting book. I read through this.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I was able to go through this. And if you read the epilogue, I think it sums it up.
Yes. Unfortunately, many of these places you can't go anymore.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, especially the monastery, the Larum Monastery.
They continue to be very suspicious and they keep a very tight hold on who visits. And if you have an Indian passport, they'll be even more suspicious.
Yeah. Yes. But it's interesting. We had CGTN, which interviewed me just last week on this book, the China National Television.
Asma, I think there's some problem with your mic.
Can you hear me, sir?
There's a lot of echo from your mic.
Now, sir?
Now slightly better. Still there is some echo. Are you using a speaker or something?
Yes, sir. It's on the ordinary speaker of the laptop.
Oh, okay. Maybe you can use a headphone or something. Otherwise, it is causing a lot of disturbance.
I'll just arrange for some. I'll be back.
Hi, Bala. So Bala is the guy who's been coordinating, so you are in touch with him.
Yes.
So he's cloned himself. He uses his video on one and he uses his mic on the other.
Okay.
So we are seeing two Balas.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Hi, good morning.
Morning. Nice
what about Mr. Nair? Is he joining? I saw he has...
No, he's not joining today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, Bala, sir.
Hi, good morning, Purnima.
All set, sir. Do you need some assistance? Should I...
All set. I've already started. All set.
Great.
So do you hold a lot of events?
Yeah, plenty. I think there's been a overload of events now.
Okay.
So we need to slow down.
Jumping.
So the webinar fatigue seems to be setting in all around the country.
Different time zones, different continents.
Yeah. Actually,
from the time the sun rises till he sets and beyond, you are constantly awake with either UK seminar or USA webinar or Japan webinar or something. So thankfully, Sunny is in only one place. We are going around. So we can choose to see which to attend, which not to attend.
Okay.
How is it in Singapore?
And I will go around giving book talks around the world, but then I'll be limited to just a few cities. But now suddenly I feel like I can do this with many more places. So
that's good. In fact, I think the horizontal transactions have improved. You are touching base with many people who you could not talk to earlier.
Yeah.
So the geographical limitation or the travel limitation has been removed.
Yeah.
So a lot more people are connected.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Dr. Srinivasan. Welcome. Good morning. You need to unmute yourself to just say hi to us.
Sir, good morning. How are you, sir?
All good.
Yes. It's so nice to be here, sir. Morning, Bala.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, Mr. Shivaji Das. How are you?
Hi. Morning, Dr. Srinivasan. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Mr. Das, I saw an interesting news on BBC early this morning. Apparently, thousands of Tibetans broke a record by some dance performed there in Tibet today or yesterday.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. They do
A circular formation.
Oh, okay.
Asma, if you read his book, you will know that Tibetans keep on dancing from morning to night.
Yeah, that's correct.
They don't stop dancing.
China makes them dance, perhaps.
I don't want to give away everything about the book, but this is one portion where he specifically talks about their habit of dancing throughout the day.
Yes.
And finally, it becomes a circumambulation, in his words.
Yes.
Vasan sir looks really excited about the book. I can't wait to read it.
Oh, it's lovely. You all must read it.
I
It's a
heard
lovely
my
book.
publisher is now available at the Higginbotham's in Chennai.
Bala, you may like to wait till 11:05 and see if some more people are likely to come in, because I saw there were many more webinars which are going on the same day, different organizations. Monday morning blues. But Monday morning everybody is busy. There's so many invitations I got for webinars today. So everybody is trying to cash on the fact that they don't have to spend on travel.
Yeah.
Yes,
Don't have to spend
absolutely,
on hotels.
sir. Absolutely, sir.
And so, it's minimal expenditure and maximum return.
Yes.
Absolutely, sir. Benefit ratios there in webinars, sir.
Between 11 and 12:30, there are at least 10 webinars I counted.
Oh, okay.
So
Sir, we're missing the hot samosas and tea, sir.
I know. That's one thing I also miss. Hot samosas and chutney. Hi, Vidya.
I miss as well.
Vidyapati, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Vidyapati is our scholar who is in China.
Oh, okay.
He's doing his PhD.
Oh, okay. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Hi, Nishantini. Welcome. Hello, Sakshi. Good, the number is slowly growing. You give them a little more time, I'm sure it will swell.
Sure.
Yes,
sure.
sir.
We'll give another 5 minutes.
So, is it okay if I present some slides or pictures?
Sure. Most certainly. Take your time. You have enough time, and I'm sure it will be very interesting, and people will be curious. And
Thank you.
Since there's so much that you've done on the trip, people would be very happy to know.
Thank you. I think one from my publishing company is here. Lakshmi, let's join, I guess.
Lakshmi is there, Sakshi is there, Nishantini is there. I don't know how many of them you know.
No, not really. I only know you and Bala.
Sakshi is
Okay. All right. A lot of them are quite curious about, this book. So I'm sure they'll be very happy to listen from you firsthand.
Thank you, then. So, do all of you speak Chinese? I'm just wondering.
Chinese? Yeah, I can. I can say ni hao. But at the end of all the conversation, English, I can say she, she. Monica can speak Chinese. Vidyapati can speak Chinese. Purnima is a Laoshi. She teaches Chinese.
Okay.
So I can talk to them in Chinese. Do you speak Chinese?
Can you read as well?
She is teaching Chinese. We have, this is the third course that she is teaching.
Oh, I see.
Do you speak Chinese?
I can manage in the restaurant and I can manage in the street. Yeah.
Oh.
I can read only like about 500 characters.
Okay. Vidyapati can speak. He's been writing also in Chinese.
Oh,
and he won a prize in China for one of his articles.
Wow.
And Purnima, of course, is a level 3. Monica is level 4. Yeah. So.
Bala Subramanian level 1, sir. You forgot that, sir.
Yeah, Bala is also level 1.
Wow.
But he's above all of them.
Sir.
Of course, sir. Of course.
Hello, Biza. Good morning and welcome. And hello, Mr. Onikrishnan.
Hey, Mr. Vasan and Bala, do you think it will be possible to get a recording of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Already.
Most
It will be
certainly.
also posted on our C3S YouTube channel also, of course.
Oh, okay. Great. Thanks.
Is it simultaneous, Bala, or is it going to be done later? The YouTube.
Simultaneous, sir.
All right.
The recording was
Then
on
again-
after it goes on.
No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, Purnima?
It will be uploaded later, sir. The recording
All right,
is
okay.
done now.
Just
It
send
will be
the-
uploaded later.
No problem. Send the link thereafter to Mr. Shivaji so that he can
Sure,
share it with
we'll do
his
so.
friends.
Okay, sir.
Is it pretty hot over there now?
Oh, it's raining here in Chennai last couple of days.
Oh, okay.
And everybody is happy because the reservoirs are filling up.
Oh,
And
okay.
unfortunately, Kerala and Karnataka have heavy rains, and there have been a lot of landslides. People have been buried under, torrential rains and mud.
Okay.
So it's been quite bad.
Okay.
Kerala in Idukki, in Karnataka and Kodagu. Chennai, not so much, but there is enough inflow
Okay.
from different rivers filling up the reservoirs here.
Okay. I just heard in Guwahati, where I come from, it used to rain a lot, but this year has been quite dry. And Guwahati has been like the hottest, one of the 10 hottest places in India.
Yeah. I was there 2 years ago.
Okay.
We went past Guwahati and went up to Tawang.
Okay, yeah.
So, and we visited Assam, Meghalaya, went to Shillong.
Yeah.
Then we also went to the cleanest village in Asia.
Oh, yeah. I forget the name.
I forget the name.
Molinong or something. Molinong.
Yeah. Bala, you can start at 11:05.
Yes.
Sir,
Give them
can I pose a
another 4
question?
minutes.
Sir, I have a question. Can I? Before 11:05?
To Mr. Shivaji,
Yes, sir.
ask him. I thought you were going to ask him after he makes his presentation.
Yeah, that would be probably about the presentation. But since Asma ma'am already kickstarted the conversation with the dance, I was wondering how about the social media dance performances and martial arts performances that we see from the frontiers of Tibet or from the Tibet Lhasa. There are a lot of doing TikTok videos coming from prominent, celebrity figures. Are they all fake, made up, paid, or is it really genuine, personalities who are interested in the art forms and performing? It's just my question.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed thing. From what I understand, there's a lot of state-backed social media stuff which goes on in whole of China, and certain people are kind of paid to do that as well. But there's a lot of original content as well, as long as it doesn't cross certain lines. It's allowed. Yeah, but you have both types, from what I understand.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, Mr. Krishnan. Vanakkam. That's Mr. Krishnan, who is also a member of the C3S, an accomplished scientist. That's Mr. Shivaji.
Nice to meet you.
Monica, just to add to what Mr. Shivaji said, I was in Kunming on 2 occasions. And they have a separate pavilion where they showcase the talent of the ethnic community. There are some 17, 18 of them who are all dressed up. And they're all paid by the state. And they maintain different pavilions in which they showcase their artifacts, their dance, their herbal medicine, and all the time. I was a very interesting incident. In one of these pavilions, they had a big jar which had a cobra. And on top of that, they had put a lot of herbal medicine and maybe some wine. And it was distilled. And there was a Sardarji who was behind me. And we are walking past and they're explaining with the help of an interpreter that it's one of the medicine. So the Sardarji asked if it is all right for him to drink it. So they said, yeah, most certainly. So sure enough, he took a glass and he drank it. And, we all were very worried about his health. But, he looked fine and he went off thereafter. So there are many forms of this, and there's plenty of tourist interest in these pavilions, which were in Kunming, when we went for the expo. This was 7-8 years ago. So, like he said, it's both state-sponsored as well as also left to the individuals. The unfortunate part is, or the fortunate part is that you can't see TikTok anymore.
Thank you, sir.
But that's some of the grudge that if you have seen one of those New Year programs, which are big in China, the national TV programs comes every New Year. Yeah. And they will always have these minorities in very colorful clothes dancing and always happy. That's a continuous feature.
They'll showcase all these nicely painted, dressed up people there, but they will never show you Uyghurs.
Yes. There was a famous Uyghur comedian. But I think he has retired now. But there was a very famous comedian who used to be there.
All right, I see your publisher has also joined.
Yes.
Welcome, Konark Publishers. Yeah, Bala, you can start whenever you are ready.
Yes, sir.
Shivaji, can we start?
Yeah, sure.
Very good morning to all of you. I thank Dr. Shivaji Das for being here today with us. And I also thank my director, Commodore Vasan sir, also present. And I also take this opportunity to thank all the participants here. So before I hand over the mic to my director who will be making the conversation, I would like to just give a small brief bio of Dr. Shivaji Das. Dr. Shivaji Das is the author of 3 travel diaries of sorts. One was Sacred Love, Erotic Arts in the Temples of Nepal, which was written in 2018. The second one, Angels by the Murky River, Travels off the Beaten Track in 2017. And Journeys with a Caterpillar, traveling through the islands of Flores and Sumba, Indonesia, which was written in 2013. The author is an Assam-born who have written articles and which have been published in Time Magazine, Asian Geographic, Outlook Traveler, the Jakarta Post, Conscious Magazine, and Free Thinker. His interviews have been featured on BBC, CNBC, The Economist, Travel Radio Australia, Around the World TV, among others. His photographs have also been in collaboration and presented with his wife, Yolanda, you fondly call Lobo, which have been exhibited in the Dark Room Gallery, Vermont, USA, Kuala Lumpur International Photography Festival, Malaysia, the Arts House, Singapore, and the National Library of Singapore. He is also a conceptualizer of the Global Migrant Festival and Migrant and Refugee Poetry Contest. And he is also the Asia Pacific Managing Director as the Frost and Civilian Singapore. So with this, I would like to open the session and hand over the chair to my director, Commodore Vasan sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala, for that introduction. Dr. Shivaji Das, a hearty welcome to you for this event. We keenly look forward to this. And thanks for also forwarding a soft copy of your book, which I was able to go through. As they normally say, we cannot put it down. So it was a wonderful book to read. And there's so much that one gets in the form of your journey. And one recollects the journey of Swan Sang, of course. That's spelled differently, pronounced differently. So I will never get the pronunciation right. But here as a traveler, and you mentioned about Sichuan in your book. And apparently that's where this traveler was initiated as a bhikshu. It's very interesting at the age of 20. And I'm talking about the 6th century. And thereafter he traveled across for so many years. And according to the the history, he's even visited Kanchipuram here. And I know we also had separate conversations with others here who have been studying these travelogues from the millennium, and we really gained from these insights. So from that point of view, the conversation with you, I am sure, will tell us about the key features of the book. I'm not going to disclose all of them. I thought I will keep one more secret up my sleeve, but Bala has already given it up. I wanted to keep everybody guessing as to who is Lobo, but he's already said who Lobo is. And So it's not Man Friday of Mr. Shivaji Das, it's Women Friday of Shivaji Das and his wife, who is also a Singaporean, and Shivaji Das in Singapore. And a very interesting things that is brought out. He's not only visited the highest, peak there, even the airfield where he rushed to early in the morning, which is located at some 4,400 meters. These are very interesting episodes. More importantly, the fact that he traveled through Tibet from Sichuan and other places exposes you to the kind of blending of the Hans and the Tibetans. Though at places where you feel that you miss out on a harmonious blending, which is what we are looking forward to. And that's something that opens up many questions there. And those of you who will read the epilogue at the end of the book will realize what Mr. Shivaji Das is actually trying to bring out. I tried to look at Shangri-La. Shangri-La, of course, was apparently mentioned in the book of Mr. Hilton way back in 1933. And so it was a fictitious place, more like a utopia, where people live in harmony and everybody is there. And, there is no thirst, and it's a heavenly abode, etc., etc. But everybody tries to tell you that there is no such place on earth, except perhaps in Tibet. And there are a few other places where they have said there's a resemblance of this because of the topography, because of the climate, because of the people, because of the way they accept nature despite the harsh realities of snow, mountains, and all that. So it's a very interesting journey that he has gone through, and wherever he was recognized as an Indian, people actually rushed to him. And in one incident, he even mentions that the importance of the guest otherwise was moved away, and they focused on Shivaji and his companion. And so these are very interesting. I don't know how many of us ever will be able to visit these places. So all that he can perhaps do is to see it through his eyes, his companion's eyes, to understand the traditions, the culture, the topography, the peaks which are there, and the way that these places have adopted to tourism, which is an essential part of making their livelihood. So whether it is the yaks which are milked to get whatever the 1,000 liters, or whether it is for something in a temple where, Shivaji, they used to study a vegetarian, also recounts his experiences of how he went to some particular places which provided vegetarian food. And so everywhere he was asked as to why is he a vegetarian. So I also found it very interesting in the book where he says that obviously there must be many yaks which are falling off the cliff because there is so much meat that's available of yak, where the people there, they say they don't kill it for business and they don't kill it for trade. So, there are very, very interesting episodes that is counted. I think this journey, whether it's living in a hotel which is overlooking the beach, or whether it is the competitive nature of people to try and get these people, or whether it is like in our Chennai and other places, where the bus conductor shout out and say, so-and-so place, Madurai, 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 Pollachi, Pollachi, Pollachi. It's no different in China, where once they identify as where a particular person wants to go, so they start shouting out to draw customers. He's also recounted journeys, long journeys in buses, which I'm sure, and I don't know how his back is holding after all these journeys seriously, because he's sitting quite directly. So I found it very interesting. Towards the end, when I come up after his own recounting, I will tell you on the other Shangri-La, which he has explained a lot. This is what is very important to us for researchers in C3S, because we are always trying to understand China through not just the travelogues of the past, but also through the present dynamics of social transgression that has taken place in Tibet from the Han community. And so you see an artificial Tibet which is there, a real Tibet that is perhaps hidden there, and There's so much more that I'm sure we will gain from this interaction. I'm sure at the end of this, he'll be ready to take some questions. I would recommend that you put them in the chat box. Bala will look at these questions and post them together so that the author has enough time to respond to these questions towards the end. And at the end of it, I will talk about the Other Shangri-La. So with this, Dr. Shivaji, all yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. So very good morning to all of you, and special thanks to the Chennai Center of Chinese Studies for organizing this. Thank you, Mr. Vasan and Mr. Balasubramaniam for organizing this whole thing. And it's my honor and also privilege to be talking to you all. The book was just launched about 9 days back officially. So this is actually my first discussion about this book. So I'm really looking forward to questions from all of you as well who happen to be experts on China and that part of the world. Yeah. So very quick look. It has been very hard to get the book published, and special thanks to Mr. Nair from Konark, as well as the rest of the team, Jiza, and others who have made this possible. It was a lot of hard work in terms of editing, getting the design and all of that. And especially getting the book published during this time of COVID-19 was not easy. And to ship it around was also not very easy. And actually, it took a while, but finally I have a physical copy of the book after a long time. And thank you to Konark for making this book available. It's always a different feeling to have a physical copy of the book, and it was worth the wait for me as well. Yeah. So a little bit about myself in addition to what Balasubramaniam had said. So I've been living in Singapore for 14 years, and I've been a travel writer for most of my writing career, as much as that is concerned. I am a management consultant, so that's my day job. But this is my fourth book, and other than the 3 travel-based non-fiction work that I've written, the recent one happens to be on the art and erotic sculptures on the temples of Nepal, which is more of a scholarly book. But this book, The Other Shangri-La, is more of a travelogue based on our journeys through that part of the world. Now, what I'll do is, if I can, I would just like to present some pictures and also the map of the journey. So give me a moment. Let me see how this looks like. Just a second. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, you just have to open the slide. We are able to see the screen.
Can you see that?
Yeah, you just have to open it.
It's open. The Other Shangri-La. Can you see a black slide?
No, there's a time lag. I think it'll just display now.
Okay, let me know. Let me know once it shows.
Yeah, still we are only seeing a white screen. That's your computer screen. Yes.
Can you see now?
Yeah. Yes. Now we're able to just put it on full screen. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes, good.
Okay, good. Thanks for your patience. So I'll talk maybe about 30 minutes about this book, and I'll pick a few chapters, and if time allows, I'll do a short reading as well. So this book is about our journey through the Sino-Tibetan frontier in Sichuan. Yeah? And this is a map of the journey. And it's actually not Tibet in that sense, because it's not part of the Tibetan province as it is known in China, or isn't part of Qinghai either. But it's this whole area from on the western part of Sichuan, which is a high altitude area, just like the rest of Tibet and parts of Qinghai. And also the culture is largely Tibetan in that sense. Now, it was also another interesting way to travel to the Tibetan areas, because in Tibet province as such, it's very difficult for a foreigner to go by himself or herself. You have to be part of a tour group or part of some delegation, and it's very difficult to do independent travel in Tibet as such. But in Sichuan and this part of that province, there were no such restrictions at the time I traveled to. Yeah, and of late, I think some of these places like Serta and others have barred foreigners from going there. On and off, they have been banning people from foreigners, especially to go to places like Litang as well. But at the time when I traveled, it was very much possible to travel to at least these locations where I went to. So Chengdu, as you may be familiar, is the capital. It's a huge city in Sichuan. And from there, we crisscrossed the whole place. We went first to Kangding, we went to Tagong, we went to Litang, Taocheng, Yading. Then we came back all the way, and then we went again to Serta, Bamei, and Danbai, and so on. Yeah. So it was always very high altitude. I think the average altitude in all these places was always about 4,000 meters. So, and we traveled in the month of October and November, which was reasonably cold at that part of the year. Of course, during December and January, it's it can reach even minus 25, minus 40 even in some of these places, but it was already below zero in most of these cities when we were there during our travel. Now, just to show you how the landscape looks like, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, I would say, but not many people know about it, especially outside of China. It's getting popular in China to some extent, but outside of China, very few people know about this place. But all along, you can see these fantastic mountains, the snow-capped peaks. These are from the Yading Nature Reserve, and this area is also claiming to be the original Shangri-La. Yeah? And you just heard from Commander Vasan that there are a few Shangri-Las in the world, other than the hotel, even real places. There are a few which are claimed to be Shangri-La, the fictional place which Hilton had mentioned. There are some places which are better known, such as the one in Yunnan. But this place in Yading is also claiming to be one of the Shangri-Las. And you can see here some of the pictures of the landscape. These are the grasslands near Tagong. It's again about 4,000 meter high. And this is Mount Aba at the background, one of the most spectacular mountains that we saw. Not very high, it's about 5,500 meters high, but because its prominence is so clear, it kind of dominates the landscape where it is. And you can see all these yaks which are roaming around. And all along our trip, we were accompanied by the yaks or the famous or infamous Tibetan dogs which were there. Now, this is also home to the one of the most dangerous roads in the world. The Sichuan-Tibet Highway, or Highway 318, as it is known as, is famously dangerous and all along the trip, we saw many cars and vans which had fallen off the cliffs and had their temporary grave along the sides of this highway. This also used to be the route which was taken by the porters who carried tea, the famous tea horse trail, which was similar to the Silk Road, but was mainly used for transporting tea from China to the western parts of the world. Today, this has largely given place to this Sichuan-Tibet highway, which is good at certain places, but mostly it's bad. And it's quite a harrowing journey as you go along. Now, very little about some of the interesting places we visited along this trip. This is in the city of Kangding. Kangding was the first city which comes as you rise up into the Tibetan Qinghai Plateau from the plains city of Chengdu. Yeah? And Kangding is famous all over China for the Kangding love song. This was a love song which was shown on national television in the 1950s. And since then, it's become more and more popular. Everywhere in Kangding, you can hear the Kangding love song. And this is the lyrics of the Kangding love song printed in a concrete book, which is there in the city square. And there are these, this is essentially a song of the famous girl, the most beautiful girl from Kangding, and then the most handsome man from Kangding, who happened to travel along the side by side on the horses, and it's a story about their romance. Now, this particular part of the Tibetan plateau is known as Kham. Yeah, there are a few parts of the whole plateau is divided into a few parts like Yusang, Aba, Amdo, Chang, and all that. But this part is known as Kham. And Kham men are very well known all across China as being very tall, dark skinned, sharp features. In other words, the most eligible bachelors to have. And there was this Han writer, Chili, who had written this book, like a novel about Han girl falling in love with this Kham man. And that kind of caught the fascination of whole of China. And today, all over China, the Kham men are known as one of the most handsome and courageous men that are available. The women of Tibet as well, there are certain fetishes about them. And later I will talk about one particular place called Danba, whose women are also famous as one of the most beautiful in China. Now, what we did along this trip was to undertake a few adventures. So I was going I traveled to these places along with my wife. She was born in China and her family is still in the northeast part of China. She is half Manchu and half Han. So she can speak Mandarin. I can speak only a little bit. So she was largely my interlocutor during this trip. Although we did meet some people who could speak a little bit of Hindi in some places, especially in the monasteries, who had been to India. And then some of them spoke English as well. Yeah? But we began our trip after Kangding. We went to Tagong, the highlands, and there we stayed with the nomads over the night. And this is the tent which you can see there, together with the yaks. So this was the setting where we were for one night and a few days. And here you can see the nomads. You already heard about the yaks, one of the most interesting animals that I came to know of, because they have a special heart design which allows them to live in high altitudes. They have a special kind of stomach which keeps on digesting the food all the time to keep the rest of the body warm. And they also happen to have very unique preferences. The mothers are very loyal. They can get violent towards other people if they see these people coming towards their children. So whenever you have mother yaks, the owners will always tell you to stay away from these yaks. I was staying in the night with the nomads when the yak babies were actually also staying inside the same tent. And all night, of course, they were making sounds. And the moment they were released, some of these yak babies, they came to knock me. Maybe they thought I was their mother, or they were not happy with me, either way. So I had some interesting experiences with the yaks and the nomads. These nomads have seen many changes over the last 50 years. They have very interesting customs still. They have polyandry. They have polygamy in some form as well. This is in order to protect the land for pastures that they have, so that it doesn't get divided between many people in the next generation. But they have seen huge changes. They have been settled down by the government in the cities, but many of them refused, and they have actually gone back to their pastures. They have certain new economic factors which have started to influence their lives. The whole business about caterpillar mushrooms, I don't know if you're aware, these caterpillar mushrooms are one of the most highly priced and sought after products from this whole Tibetan plateau. It's for Chinese traditional medicine. It's considered, one of those elixirs which can cure many things. And many of these families of nomads, including the children in particular, they have been able to increase their income substantially by collecting these caterpillar mushrooms. Nonetheless, that has led to some conflicts as well. Others, outsiders coming and collecting such mushrooms in their fields. But at the same time, the increased prosperity, the change in life of women over the last few years, the level of education has gone up. So all these has had a significant impact on the life of nomads. But still, their health conditions remain much worse than even the rest of Tibet. And of course, the overall population of China. If you see there, mortality, the lifespan is much lower, almost half, I would say, compared to the whole of mainland China, if you consider. So there are still many issues with their lives, but they have seen many changes in the last few years. Now, this place is one of the most interesting that we visited. This is called Larum. It's about, I think, 30 kilometers away from the town of Sertal. Once again, sitting at an elevation of 4,000 meters. It's considered the largest monastery in the world. At one point, they had 10,000 people. At this point, maybe they have 4,000. There have been fires, there have been government restrictions which have forced some of them to go away or go out. And today it is barred. It has barred foreigners from visiting this place. But at that point, it was very much possible to visit Larum, and went there for a couple of days. And you can see the density of the houses, of the individual houses that you see there. And many people say it's actually also the world's highest slum in that sense. Yeah. So largest monastery as well as the world's highest slum. That's the distinction of Larum. Very hard to reach. We had to undertake a 16-hour bus journey to reach there. And especially at night, when the lights go down and the small lamps in each of these windows start coming out, it's quite a spectacular sight at different times of the day. Now, if you bear with me, I would like to read a little about the description of Larum, and that could give you a sense of the book and how it was. Yes, so if it is okay with everyone, can I read for maybe another 7 minutes, a little bit about Larum?
Right.
So here,
Right.
yeah. So this is a small excerpt from the book, and it's called the chapter is called Larungar, the world's largest monastery and highest slum. Here it goes. We made a late start for Larungar, the world's largest monastery and arguably the highest slum as well. It was snowing and our van skidded and swerved on the icy road. The entrance to Larum was dismal. Stagnant pools of water had formed here and there. Street urchins and dogs were roaming about aimlessly, and vegetables rotted everywhere. But once we got out of the car, we realized the true scale and beauty of Larum. Hills upon hills of crimson red, an endless cluster of red houses, almost identical, all tiny, just large enough to contain a small bed and a luggage bag, resembling a few thousand red Lego blocks pressed onto earth. The Larum Monastery, located in the Garzi Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture in Sichuan province, was opened in 1980 by Khenpo Jingme's Phuntsok. Legend held that Khenpo came out of his mother's womb in a meditational posture and recited Manjushri's mantra immediately thereafter. Khenpo envisioned Larum as a university town where monks, nuns, and lay people from all over Tibet could come and study. As the Chinese government's attitude towards religion became more relaxed, Larum spread like an amoeba over these hills to accommodate more than 10,000 residents. Most of the shacks at Larum were cubicles that went about 2 meters in each dimension, with just enough space for a small bed, a stove, and a chimney. There was no heating, and the showers and the toilets were communal, separate for men and women. It was hard to imagine any kind of luxury in such a state of living. Larum was a place purely designed for faith or an escape from desperation. We came across a group of monks who were building a new house. It takes 5 or 6 days to build such a house here, one of the young monks explained. You pay 7,000 to 8,000 yuan to buy something like this. The rate gets cheaper as one goes higher up in the mountains. That's where the children stay. Earlier, you could get a place for even 3,000 yuan, but nowadays everything is expensive. We asked the monk about the abundance of soggy biscuits and rotten food that we had seen in the rooftops. People just throw things out of their kitchens, the monk smiled, or they feed birds and cats to gain merit and then forget to clean up. These days, there are perhaps only 4,000 to 5,000 residents in Larum. No one was certain. Official restrictions apparently limited the number of residents to a maximum of 2,000. They were all immigrants here, coming from across the Tibetan Qinghai Plateau and beyond. They were of all ages from 5 to 100. Nearly half of the inhabitants were women. About 10 to 20% of them were Han. The paved road split the settlement by gender. The nuns stayed to the right, the monks to the left. There were lay people as well. They ran small shops or begged the tourists for money. Near the main temple, we met a Han monk. He was in his 80s but appeared strong. He used to be a farmer in Liaoning, a northeastern province of China. My daughter also lives here, he said with a laugh that was constant on his face. But of course, her house is on the other side of the road. I was uneducated. I learned to read only after coming to Larum. Earlier, I understood nothing. Now that I am older and I can read, I understand a lot more about Buddhism. I bought a house here 3 years earlier. Also, we get money for attending classes here, he laughed. I miss most of them, but whenever I feel short of money, I go and attend a few classes. A group of young Tibetan women broke into our conversation to beg for money. Instead of asking us, they began pestering the monk. You should be ashamed of asking me for money, he said as he chased them away. You should be the one paying me to get some merit. For lunch, we found a small restaurant selling Sichuan food. A young Tibetan monk came up to me. Hello, how are you? He spoke in perfect English. Jigme and his friends sat down with us for lunch. Jigme had a sturdy build and a perfect smile. He wore thick glasses and spoke in a gentle voice. I'm from Durga in eastern Tibet, he said. I came here in 2008 and then again in 2011. In between, I went to India to Bodh Gaya. When I came back, I bought one of the small houses here. Jigme spent most of his days studying. Over the last 1200 years, Tibetan went to much greater depths to expand Buddhist philosophy, which they originally took from India. So there is a lot to read. Every day I get up at 7 in the morning. It's too cold to wake up before that. I cook my food and then go for classes. Here you can learn Tibetan literature, medicine, astronomy, and culture. So there are a lot of classes and frequent exams. But this month is the time when the monks take some time off from studies to meditate 3 to 4 hours every day. We recall the printouts posted on the doors of some monks' quarters. I am meditating, only knock if really necessary. Special hotline numbers were also pasted on key intersections to be dialed in case of an emergency if the concerned officials were not available because of their meditational duties during this period. I asked Jigme about career opportunities. Most monks just move on after staying here a few years and then join as monks in some other temple. Only some who want to become teachers stay for longer. As for me, I want to stay on. I want to explain to the rest of the world my knowledge and understanding of Buddhism. I asked him about life in such a slum. Your life is good, even though so many people live so closely together. There are many rules to keep things orderly, maybe too many rules. But this whole place is very democratic because every proposal for a new rule has to be put to vote. This can lead to funny situations like we had once over whether we can wear vests. Ham and Amdo Tibetans like to wear vests, but the central Tibetans don't, so it was put to vote. I asked him if government rolled in from time to time. Yes, officials do, he whispered. But nowadays they largely leave us alone, unless they find an excuse. Like after the fire, they forced most old people to move to government-made housing down below. They said it would be easier to rescue them in case there was an emergency. But the old find it hard up to the classes. The Chinese government doesn't want this place to grow too big, and they don't want the old and young to mingle. This is the communist way of doing things, no discussion, just act the things of others. After lunch, we walked through the female quarters. There were notices outside every ladies' toilet proclaiming, "Gentlemen, you will lose merit if you enter the women's toilet." At a temple, we found Sangye, a young nun. Sangye's father had died after being struck by lightning a few years back. Soon after, her uncle brought her to the monastery. It is better here, Sangye said. As good as it could get for me, perhaps. At home, they would make me work all day and night. I had become so thin. Before we left, we met another bunch of Han monks. I asked them about the future of Buddhism in China, given that it was getting increasingly kitschy and tacky, with an emphasis on mega shrines and Buddha parks, with high entry prices and mandatory cable car rides. Lin replied, "It's sad, but it's true. it is getting commercialized. But you have to understand that's what the government and companies are trying to do. That's not the way we common people practice Buddhism. In any case, there is growing interest in Buddhism. The pressure of the materialistic life in China is pushing more people towards the region. I think Buddhism will eventually succeed in China. The last 50 years were just an anomaly. On our way back, we rode in a van full of Tibetan lay people. We asked them about Larum and his monks. One of them, called Rambo, said, "Yes, the monks are good for our business. That's why lay people like us follow them here. But they also bring in problems. Did you hear about the fire? It was because one nun forgot about the fire she had lit in her kitchen. 400 homes were affected. You can't even trust them to take care of themselves. How can they take care of all of us Tibetans and mankind? They are too busy with hand donors," he went on. "You will see the senior monks if you go to any expensive restaurant in Sartar tonight, enjoying life with their Han followers. Go to a Han restaurant because Han followers can't have Tibetan food. Our monks follow the Hans to these restaurants because in Larum, you can't cook meat." Everyone began laughing, clapping, and screaming hysterically as we went back to Sartar. Thanks a lot. That was like a short reading from the Larum Gar. I'll present a bit more about the rest of the journey, maybe if you allow me another 5 minutes. Let's see.
Sure, we can have another 5 minutes.
Sure. Can you see the slides again?
Sure.
Okay. So this is Larum. Yeah. And we also witnessed one of the famous traditions of Tibetans, the sky burial. It is almost impossible to now watch a sky burial now in Tibet as such, but in Larum it was possible. This also happens to be the home ground of Gesar, one of the legendary kings of this whole area. And he's a fictional character, of course. No one knows whether he was really there. But they say that the epic of Gesar is not just the longest story in the world, but it's also not yet finished because scholars and poets are still adding elements to the story of Gesar. Yeah? And that's how it lives. And Sartar, where we were, is kind of proclaiming it to be the home ground of Gesar. We also went to this area around Damba, which used to have a kingdom. Yes, so they had queens, and then the next in line to the throne would also be a woman. And there are some doubts that this was a real historic place, but there are many evidences now coming that it was actually there. There was a kingdom in existence. And if you read The Journey to the West, one of the famous Chinese classical texts, there is a part about Tripitaka going to India through one of the queendoms, and the queen was trying to seduce him and trying to convince him to get married. There are some arguments which say this is the part where Tripitaka was going through and where he met the kingdom. You can see these towers here. These towers, some of them are almost 1800 years old. No one knows for sure whether these were meant to watch over other people, whether it could be their neighbors or actually invaders coming from other villages. But some of the surrounding villages have become popular with local tourists because the Chinese National Geographic, they mention these villages as the most beautiful in China. Yeah? This queendom, based on that legend, now this region holds an annual beauty contest. Yeah? And it is like any other beauty pageant which happens anywhere in the world. I was the only non-Chinese, non-Tibetan person in that whole place. So I was quite an attraction. And also my wife was dressed as one of the local women, and many Chinese photographers found it easier to photograph her rather than the contestants. But this is the highlight of the region. Every year, the villages send in their nominations, and then they get selected. And they have these golden flower, silver flower winners. That's how they call the first and the second runners-up. And nowadays, many of them have become celebrities after winning this contest. So in the book, there are interviews with the contestants, their families, past winners, and so on. But also do note that this is the place I was saying which has the most beautiful women as per the legend in this part of the world. But also you have a lot of love triangles and infidelities which are happening in this, because on the one hand you have calm men who are considered the most handsome, and you have these women from Damba who are considered the most beautiful. So there are many such love triangles in this place because of that. And we somehow got caught into one such love triangle. And if you read the book, you'll get to know what exactly happens. Yeah. So in a nutshell, this is a region which is at this borderline between these two different cultures. Also happens to be one of the most tenuous in the sense that most of the self-burnings, self-immolations which have happened in protest to the government rule have actually happened in this region. So there's a lot of tension, even though people were afraid to talk very open about it. But on and off, we did hear signs of that or expressions of that tension. So there have been definitely material gains. People have become much richer than they used to be. The old feudal structure is no longer there. Women have gained a lot in their position. But there's also this feeling of being insulted, the insult to the Dalai Lama, the way he's represented in Chinese media day in, day out. Even though this region doesn't happen to be the direct followers of Dalai Lama, they are more followers of Karmapa Lama at this point in this region. But they still feel that as an insult to their culture and something that they would like to not see in their lifetime. Yeah. So it's in that sense a region which is shaped by conflicts, shaped by this continuous tussle between the signification of their culture, about Hans running the businesses in these areas, but also at the same time changing the way Tibetans live their lives, because as you can understand, there's a big following for Tibetan Buddhism among the southeastern coast of China, and they're actually the main sponsors of the Buddhist establishments in this part of the world. So there are all these factors which are changing the way people are behaving, or people are changing their outlook. And that's what I found very interesting. I tried to highlight in this particular book. So it's available now in Amazon and Flipkart as well, in ebook as in print. And it's also available in the main bookstores in Chennai, I understand, and in many parts of the world. So yeah, I would request you to get a copy and leave a review in these places. Give me your honest reviews. And thanks for listening to me and giving me this opportunity to talk about my journey. And I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shivaji, for a fascinating account of your journey. I know there's a lot more. Surely you don't want to read out the whole book, otherwise people will not buy it. So I'm happy that arouse the curiosity of the people. And there's so much that you can learn. And also, we as researchers in C3S always try to read between the lines, and that's what would be more interest to the researchers here. Not just the direct account that you have narrated so well, but also to try and read in between, particularly of the conflict between the Hans and the Tibetans, both in terms of culture and in terms of the fears that Tibetans nurture about Hanization and signification of the entire area. So I'll come back maybe towards the end after the question answer session for just a few minutes to sum it up all. Over to Bala for taking over the questions, and we take that to Mr. Shivaji. There is a question from Asma. You can take it up. Shivaji, you have to unmute yourself. You are muted.
Bala, you are muted. I think we can't say.
Bala, you are not heard. There are two questions. One is from Asma, and the other is from, I don't know if you can see it on the chat box.
Yes, sir.
If Bala cannot give it to you, then Shivaji can directly take it up from the chat box.
Yeah. First question is by Asma Masood, ma'am. She has asked, what are the dynamics of social interaction between the Hans and the Tibetans today? Do they communicate outside avenues of business, etc., on a friendly basis?
Thanks. That's a very interesting question. I must say that on the whole, based on my limited experience of traveling in that part of the world, most of the interactions did happen because of business, education, government services, or across these platforms. One very shocking thing which I noticed was that in China and in Tibet is very popular to dance, as Mr. Vasan had just mentioned. It's very popular to dance in the town squares in the evening, and everyone loves to do that, particularly women. And you could see distinct groups of circles forming. So there was a Tibetan circle and there was a Han circle. Very rarely would these circles intersect or mix with one another. Having said that, there are also marriages which are happening between the different ethnic groups. The rate of intermarriage between Tibetan and Hans is probably the highest as compared to other minorities in China, but it's still relatively small. Yeah. But what we also see is that there is an influence. Even though there are no interactions, there are influences, social influences. So Chinese culture has a big influence on the people, the Tibetans and other tribes living on this area. And there is this sense that the culture is becoming more and more Chinese in that sense. Yeah, something very clearly comes out in terms of the names of people. When you keep a name to a newborn baby, there are some messages you want to send out. Yeah, so some of these Tibetan families, they prefer giving Chinese sounding names to their babies now, yeah, because they kind of think it's easier to get jobs, easier to be more successful if you want to be integrated with this big economy, which is China. But then there are also people who believe that, no, we should never do that. Our name should be very, very Tibetan. So there are these influences. Interactions are fewer, but also there are cases of intermarriages and so on.
Thank you. And there's another question by Ms. Gargi Tharia. What are the economic differences these minority groups face in China? During inflation, how is it going to influence the cultural differences among minorities?
Yeah. So, yeah, there are quite stark economic differences. Most of the businesses are owned by Han Chinese, and some of these new towns which are coming up, or new tourist boom towns which are coming up, the hotels, the restaurants are all owned by Chinese, and they have recently come in. They have come in from southeastern part, the Fujian province of China recently. They have asked their friends to come in, and that is happening. So we also saw these half-constructed or under-construction restaurants and places, which are all owned by the Han Chinese. And that was something which the locals will always discuss. Yeah? They will not be so forthcoming in terms of complaining about the government, but they will be very vocal about talking about these differences in economic structure between the two different groups. To the extent that once we were in a car and one guy just screamed out that everything is not fair. So in a sense, maybe they are finding it happening too fast. They're unable to cope up with this whole economic machine and cultural machine, which the mainland kind of churns out, the Han majority kind of churns out. But having said that, they are also learning. I would say that we did come across new businesses started by Tibetans. They helped each other and all that. But the Hans, on the other hand, also have a different idea of the whole system. They will say, actually, the Tibetans get a lot of preferences. No one will dare raise a finger against a Tibetan person. No one will shout or say anything bad against a Tibetan person, because they think if they go to the police, because there is so much about Tibetan people and so much of sensitivity, the police will always try to keep down the conflict and actually side with the Tibetan person. Yeah. So there is this sense among the Huns that Tibetans can get away with doing anything by not paying for services, by not paying for taxi, because the government will just not act against Tibetans because of this whole sensitivity. So the Huns also feel that they are getting shortchanged in this whole process. So it's kind of interesting, and the whole Buddhism revival in this part of the world has been made possible by Chinese private sector money, the wealth from the southeast. They are the biggest sponsors of the different monasteries, the repair, their promotion, and all these have been made possible not by government money but by money from the southeast of China. So these relationships are bringing in complications and bringing in dependencies as well. So that's where we live in today in this part of the world.
Thank you. And Dr. Srinivasan has asked, what are your perceptions on signification of calm Tibet?
Yeah. So you can see it in many ways. The very first thing is that the population of the Hans is so big. Yeah, it's almost incomparably large compared to the Tibetan population out there. So the intensity and the frequency with which cultural assets are produced by the Han people, whether it's nice TikTok videos, whether it's about the Hunan music bands and all that, the Tibetans just can't compete with that volume and that frequency. Yeah? So we will see Han music getting more popular, Han skin makeup getting more and more popular among Tibetans. They used to have very different way of doing makeups and all that. So all these are changing. And at the same time, what you'll also see is that the way people are naming their kids, as I mentioned earlier, language that they are learning. More and more people are now learning Mandarin in these places, also because of the government policy of teaching Mandarin and not having enough teachers. So all these are leading to this signification of calm Tibet. But having said that, there is a reverse trend as well. Tibetan culture is also kind of the cool in China. Yeah, so you will see many fancy brands having Tibetan lettering in Beijing and other parts of the world. So there is this other thing as well, that Tibetans are kind of exoticized and their culture is exoticized in Han China. So there are these two trends. Of course, these differences in size of population between the two and the cultural strength of the other one makes it a bit of an unequal tussle.
Thank you. And Monica Sethuraman has asked, did you see CCTV installed across the place? If so, what is your opinion among locals about it? And what are the livelihood options for the youth of Larum?
Okay. So Larum is a very special place because everyone is a migrant and everyone has come there to become a Buddhist monk. Yeah? So the local population of Larum is almost, I would say, 98% monks or nuns. The others who are living there, the lay people, they are not from that area. They are They could be Tibetans, but they have moved in just to set up shops or to beg for money. So the resident population, 98% of them, their express interest is to become a monk or a nun at some point of time, and that's the career option, either to become teacher or to join some of the temples at some later point in life. Yeah. Regarding CCTVs, yes, it is installed, but I live in Singapore, which has probably one of the highest density of CCTVs in the world, and I can't complain. But during our trip, I must say, we never felt that we were being watched, or there were some seated people who were talking to us. We were taken to the police station a few times because the hotels, when they take us in, or the homestays, when they take us in, they have to register us with the police. So my wife had a Singaporean passport and I had an Indian passport then, but still, generally Chinese people on a one-to-one basis, they are very friendly and welcoming. And that's the same welcome we got even in the police stations when we went over there. So it didn't come out as something out of the ordinary. But some of the interesting thing that you see is that in Serta and even in Litang, where you have these famous festivals like the horse riding festival in Litang, or you have in Serta as well some of these festivals, there have been immolations in the past. So now you have these special rings. It's like a big butterfly ring, but without the net. And these are there in those public squares. They are meant to catch someone if they have set themselves in fire. Yeah? Because when someone is on fire, they keep moving around. So this is meant to catch that person so that immediately you can cover that person up with some clothes. So you can see those very unique things in the town squares in these places.
Next question is by a member C3S. Uma Balu ma'am has asked, did you get an opportunity to take part in any local festival?
Yes, a lot. There were many festivals during our trip in different parts, especially the beauty contest in Danba. that is one of the most important festivals in that region where we had participated. There are other festivals, also smaller ones, which we did join, which are more of religious festivals which are happening there. But there are also a few big ones, like the horse riding festival in Litang, which has been banned on and off because once one of the person just grabbed the mic during the festival and said something against the government. So it has been banned on and off, but we didn't get a chance to see that famous horse riding festival. Other than that, we witnessed sky burials, we witnessed birth ceremonies, and all those things as well.
Yeah, Ms. Lakshmi P has asked. It is said that Indian and Chinese civilization are interlinked. Did you notice any similarities?
Yeah, that's a very interesting and a big question. And being married to a Chinese household, I have to encounter that quite often. So there are personal experiences and there are empirical experiences for me. Yeah? Of course, Buddhism is the biggest connection. Yeah? If you go back into the past, people like Kumarajiva and others who, and I happen to be from Guwahati, which is near Hajo, which is supposedly the place of death of Padmasambhav. There are two places where Padmasambhav had possibly died, and one of them is Hajo. So there are these strong connections of Buddhism to China from India. And one of the monks, who was a Han monk, he said that, of course, the relationship between India and China is very bad. But we will always respect India because of Buddhism. Yeah? No matter what happens, we will always respect India because of that Buddhism. Also, in the recent years, you will see the influence of Bollywood in some small form. Some movies have become popular. A very strong influence recently has been Indian fashion. Yeah, women's fashion has been quite popular among the middle-aged and senior women in China, especially for these line dancing that they do at the town square. Yeah. So Indian numbers and Indian that particular segment. Relatively, the influence of Chinese culture in India is less. Of course, you may be familiar. Historically, the Opium War led to a lot of lack of fraternal feelings between the two countries, because many of the soldiers and the whole opium trade was kind of thought to be a source from India in China at that time. And the war in 1962 was also one of those features. So if you watch Chinese national TV today, you will see these programs, military programs, which compare Chinese and Indian military might on a weekly basis. So those kind of programs are there. So that's more on the empirical side. In the traditional sense, on a personal note, I find that the two cultures have very strong similarities. If you think the traditional way of Indian family, how it works, and the traditional way a Chinese family works, the importance or the preference for the male, the preference for or the respect for seniors, kind of customs that are followed are very, very similar. And despite what comes across as, such strong differences between the cultures, their food and their language and so on, the core of the traditional culture is actually very similar, the way I find it. This part, the Tibetan part, is slightly different in that sense that, of course, the language and the script came from India. And the form of Buddhism also evolved from the Tantric form of Buddhism, which is there in Bengal and Nepal and all these places. So that was the origin. And then over the years, Tibetan rulers, they will get many Indian saints to come and get their work translated as well. So, but the source of Buddhism in Tibet is actually not India. It came from China. Over time, it has changed. So, in today's world, the Indian form of Buddhism and the Tibetan form of Buddhism that you see here is quite different in that sense. You don't see a lot of similarities. But then there are also many people who visited India. Many of the people that we met have themselves visited India. So they take back a lot of cultural factors as well with them.
Thank you. And one of our intern, Omkar Mani, has asked, how does the language aspect play here? To what extent does Mandarin have an impact on the local or ethnic language or languages here?
So Mandarin is the language of business and is the official language. Yeah? So, most shops and all, they will have people who know Mandarin. We did meet many families who didn't speak Mandarin, especially the nomad families. Many of them, they didn't speak any Mandarin. Even among the monks and all, there were people who didn't speak any Mandarin. So the Tibetan language was very much alive and doing well, but of course, Mandarin was slowly getting over, and it was seen as the way to succeed in the larger context of the Chinese economy. So it was clearly becoming something which is a must for people to learn if they wanted to do well, get a government job, or do well in business in some of the bigger cities outside of this region.
Thank you. And next question is by Vijay Karthik. He has asked about schooling and education in Sichuan. He has asked, from your experience, what is the penetration of the modern education and values upon the Tibetan psyche? If this penetration is indeed a reality, what signs of copying are you were able to see or notice?
So this influence is very much there, but for us, when we went to these places, maybe that transition has already happened. Yeah. So the big changes came to this region during the mid to late 1950s, when even some of the places were bombed by the Chinese army. Some of the monasteries are bombed by the Chinese army. And even the CIA used to drop weapons in this region to create that insurgents kind of movement among the Kham Tibetans. And most of the social changes happened during that time. For example, in monasteries, they lost their control of land. There were no more bonded laborers attached to the monasteries and the feudal lords. So all these changes happened during that 1960s cultural revolution and all like that. So when we went, which is just 2 years back, all these changes had probably already happened. Now, the group of people who were still untouched by that were perhaps the nomads. The nomads were the ones those who continued to remain nomads were the ones among whom schooling was still not 100%. Even though it was free for them, it was not many of them were still participating, especially the nomad women. We met many young nomad girls who were not going to school, but their brothers were going to school. So it is more among the nomad community that the access of modern education has not yet reached to the same level as the rest of the party.
Thank you. And next question is by Asma Masood. And she has more asked for your opinion on her paper. It is like she has made a research in 2019 for a paper on China's domestic soft power in Tibet, where she observes that while Chinese leadership aims to control the symbols and substance of Tibetan culture, but at the same time, China also needs Tibet to project soft power internationally vis-a-vis Buddhism, etc. So, of course, China's soft power abroad is now overshadowed, and she has shared links to a paper and request your comments.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And you can see that the government is trying to control even the way the Buddhism is expressed in this part. A very interesting encounter that I had in the book, which I mentioned in the book, was in one of these towns where the government was financing the building of this special machine. And this machine had these few mantha wheels which turned in certain patterns. So if you made one turn around this machine, it was equal to chanting the Manjushri mantra for 18 billion times. Yeah. So, in Buddhist culture, many Buddhist culture, you are always looking for shortcuts to gain the merit. So this machine, using these ingenious technology and mathematics, was able to shorten that whole process of gaining merit so substantially. And this was financed by the Chinese government, which is supposedly atheist in that sense. So you can see many such examples in that part of the world where China is trying to project this soft power. The government is trying to project the soft power by showing that they are favorable towards Buddhism. They are actually supporters. As I said, the Han business people, they are funding a lot of the restoration efforts in these monasteries, but there is also government funding also available for the sustenance and restoration of some of these monasteries. So all these are being done. And as I mentioned before, that many of the Hans there, they actually complain that the government is so wary of the Tibetans becoming angry or becoming incensed at Han aggression, that they are very sensitive towards that, and they are always trying to avoid conflicts with the resident local population there. So all these do play a part in projecting that Chinese soft power as it is there. But and also these whole festivals, the whole festival politics, as it is known in some quarters, that the government is trying to create all these festivals, all these occasions for people to come, sing and dance, to present a happy picture of the local population, and they are all happy under the one mainland China umbrella. Yeah, so these are all ways in which I believe the government is trying to project that soft power.
Thank you. And next question is by Uma Balu ma'am. She has asked, could you tell us about their local delicacies like butter tea, for example? Do they have seasonal vegetables and fruits?
Yes, that's an interesting question, and I've written quite a bit about food situation during my trip in the book. So I'm a conscientious vegetarian, and that doesn't mean a lot of difficulty for me, especially in China. If you are able to speak the language, you can get people to customize and accommodate things. But in this part of the world, in whole of China, actually, there is this homogenization of tastes which have happened in the last 10 years. Just like in India, most restaurants have been homogenized as North Indian and South Indian restaurants. In China, everything has become largely Sichuan restaurant. Yeah? So either you get hot pot or barbecue. And it's not just in this part of the world, but all the way from northeast to south of China, you get this homogenization and monopolization of cuisines by the Sichuan style of cooking. And it is the same thing in this part of the world as well, which is part of Sichuan in the administrative sense, that all the options I had was to have that Sichuan pepper flavored food in that sense. But if you get butter tea, we also had a lot of milk tea, and some people have very strong preference against butter tea, but I actually didn't mind it. And also the milk tea was quite nice. And I must say that Tibetan food is considered relatively bland and lack of varieties because of the high altitude and expense in getting vegetables and other things. But we did, in the better restaurants that we visited, did get a sense of different parts of Tibet, what kind of food they have. And a very interesting food that we had was this special ginseng fruit, which was cooked with sugar syrup and all. And eating one fruit of that is supposed to increase your lifespan by 1 day. So, some people are eating that every hour to increase their lifespan as much as they can. So you have these interesting food options as well. And when you're living with the nomads, it's a totally different equation altogether, because the nomads, they are very heavy producers of cheese, butter, and they eat this, which is the kind of a flour which they eat. And it's not something for people who are not used to, because eating a zamba or eating those kind of bread takes some habituation before you can get used to it. Not because of the taste, but just because of the texture and how it maybe expands and behaves inside your mouth and your throat. Yeah, so it is an interesting place from a food perspective, not the best known cuisine in the world, and because of the geographical limitations as well.
Thank you. I would like to hand over to my director, Komodo Vasan sir, for the final question. Please unmute yourself, sir.
Sorry, I was muted. But first of all, I must say thank you to Dr. Shivaji for this wonderful interaction. He not only took questions from only the book or from his presentation, but also from various other areas of interest to the researchers and China ones. So there are 2 points which I remembered from the book. One was about the site burial which I have described in the book. It has some other resemblance to the towers of talent in India, which are Parsis use. If you go to Bombay and other places where Parsis are located, they have this similar system where the body of the deceased is taken to this towers of talent, but it's left behind there for the eagles to come and devour the body. That is the way they dispose of the body. Of course, the way described in the book is a little different. Where after the initial process, the body instruction allowed for the body to be taken up by the eagle. And also there is a significance of which portion of the body is taken first by the eagle, which decides whether the person was fired or not fired. Very interesting. So the other point was about the fruit that you described, the change fruit or whatever. So apparently in the book you said it had 1 year, but in this presentation now you said 1 day. So I don't know if it's more correct, but I'm sure they will be telling it to say that it will add 1 year instantly with a fruit. And notwithstanding, there's so much that we have learned from the interaction today, mainly related to the other side of Shangri-La. That's the one which I'm more interested in, because it's not just a description of his journey with his mountainous terrain, where as you said it's 4,000, 5,000 meters, where even oxygen is rare. And the nature has obviously looked after the yaks by providing a different heart system and a pumping system, which allows them to use. And you can realize as the armies on both sides are lined up on either side of the LAC, the kind of additional equipment that they are required, not just to sustain themselves, but to use their into very difficult terrain and mountainous. So all that remains for me is to thank Dr. Shivaji for this wonderful interaction that we have had. I'm sure there will be lots of questions from to read the book. Bala will share his email addresses and also the details of the book in our C3S group, along with the recording of this interaction, which will be up on the YouTube of the interaction, so that those who are interested can start me. Also get a little more information about the interaction itself. It had venues for instructors, and for the player, and for travel. Thank you so much. God bless. And I'm sure we'll continue to pick up our interaction with you. And I'm sure it will also motivate our readers to see other books of yours, and so that there are more questions that can be written. And being think tank and look at all aspects of China, I'd like to inform you and others that we have a separate vertical which we set the short stop. And the idea we are focusing on the short stop dimension of connectivity between India and China. It may not be the best time to talk about short stop, and everybody is trying to use the hard part. But notwithstanding, I think, as you also brought out, at the core of it, there's still a lot of respect for India because of the British, and because of the dimensions of how India projects itself, whether it's because of short corporations that we're talking about. So, thank you once again on all our behalf and on behalf of C3S, and wish you all the very best. I will not see logo. I know she is busy. I will love to see her and also hear her speak for a few minutes. Maybe we will do issues and other issues. Thank you. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The C3S researchers can stay back along with Vidyapati. We wanted to have a separate conversation with Vidyapati.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. A pleasure having you. Good day, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Vasan sir, and thank you, Bala, for
thank you, sir.
A wonderful session. Actually, good insight. I think I might get the book now.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for being here with us, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good day, sir. Bye, sir.
Lisa, you can stay back. Have you left? Lisa, you can stay back. Others can leave except for C3S researchers and Vidyapati.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think that's that, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Vidyapati, you want to speak to me separately or you want to speak to all the separately?
So, 1 minute, sir. I'll just stop the recording, sir. 1 minute.